Welcome back to Hannity. Here's a question. Will a normalization of relations with Cuba lead to the return of a convicted cop killer and prison escapee now hiding in Havana? Way back in 1973, Black Liberation Army militant Joanne Chesimard murdered a New Jersey state trooper named Werner Forster after she and fellow militants were stopped on the Jersey Turnpike. Chesimard was sentenced to life in prison for the murder and served 6 years before she escaped with the help of compatriots and fled to Cuba. She's been there for 30 years, since 1984. She's a personal favorite of Fidel Castro's. Now, according to reports, as many as 70 other American fugitives, some of the murderers, are believed to be hiding in Cuba as well. So what's the future of these criminals after the Cuban-American thaw? Joining me now, former LAPD detective Mark Furman and another former NYPD detective, Bo Dietl, our friend. Welcome to you both. So, Bo, Joanne Chesimard, you were, I think, you were on the force when this happened.
Yeah, I was on the force then. I was a New York City detective back then in the 1970s, and this is when the BLA, the Black Liberation Army, was going around, and it was shooting cops, I think.
A lot of cops.
In 1970, I think we had something like 13 cops killed by them, and then 11 killed in 71. It was an ongoing effort. And we had the FALN, that was the Puerto Rican group that was bombing everywhere. It was the Weathermen. They were part of the Weathermen was involved, but the Black Liberation Army with these were offshoots of the Black Panthers there. Joanne Chesimard gunned down a New York State troop, a New Jersey State trooper on the New Jersey Turnpike, committed cold-blooded murder. She was sentenced into jail. She then subsequently escaped and went to Cuba. And then you have the bomber, the famous bomber for the FALN. His name was William Morales. They were doing all kinds of bombings where people were killed.
Yes.
These people now all jumped over to Cuba. Like they said, there's about 70 fugitives there. Before we do any diplomatic relations, these things should be owned up. That young officer who had a family, who had children, he never was able to go home and see his kids. This lady's drinking coconut juice and eating pineapples, whatever they serve over there in Cuba. Before we should open up any diplomatic relationships, we should get them all back here and let her put her back in jail. There's a $2 million a reward for her, and I'd like to bring her back myself. Maybe Mark wants to come with me.
I would love to cover that. Mark, this Joanne Chesimard, not only was she convicted of one murder of this New Jersey State trooper, suspected in a number of other murders as a trigger puller here in New York. She has become a sort of cause on the left. Maxine Waters, the former head of the Congressional Black Caucus, supported her. Do you think Obama will go against his own constituency, the Al Sharptons of the world, and call for her apprehension and return to the U.S.?
No, I don't think he will. I don't think he'll make any effort whatsoever, and I'm not sure about any of the other people that are fugitives from justice in America. But I will say this: are there no enterprising Cuban males down there on that island that could put a bag over her head, throw her in the trunk of their '53 Chevy, and take her down to Guantanamo Bay and turn her over? I mean, really? I mean,
that's true. There's a $2 million.
Even when it was 100,000. Now it's 2 million. I mean, you're right, Bo. Let's you and I go down. Give me an address.
Well, let me tell you something.
Here's the interesting.
Hey, Mark.
Tucker, just think about this. The media gives up Darren Wilson's address from Ferguson. How about we give up her address, her GPS coordinates for their iPhones down there in Cuba, and let them bring her back?
Well, you know the answer to that, of course. A great question. But you know the answer, which is, in the media, there are no enemies on the left. And she is a member in good standing of the hard left.
Fidel Castro, after the trial, with all the evidence against Joanne Chesimard, he comes out and says, I think it was in 2005, that it's all lies against her. And Joanne Chesimard didn't do anything wrong. Well, we have an American court that found her guilty of murdering that young officer in New Jersey. And I say the same thing. I reach out to my Cuban friends over there. You want a relationship with America? Let's find out where she is. And me and Mark will jump on a plane, we'll magnetize her and bring her home.
Well, that's a great... Now, see, Mark, don't you think... I mean, this is what I find striking. The president knows, obviously, well in advance he's going to announce his normalization with Cuba. Wouldn't he go to the police union, to prosecutors, to law enforcement groups, to the family of this murdered New Jersey State trooper, the families of others murdered by fugitives in Cuba, and give them a heads up? Wouldn't they play a role in this? He just ignored them.
Well, you'd certainly want everybody to throw in their hat in this and say, this is what we should get. If you're going to normalize relations with Cuba, this is what we should get from it. But you got to remember here, Obama went into a sovereign country, our ally, with a SEAL team, got into a firefight, killed a bunch of citizens, killed UBL, and then flew back. And he can't send somebody down to Cuba to pick up this woman. I mean, she is the point person for a fugitive in Cuba.
Well, that's it. But the president, as he explained again today at his press conference, believes that the real problem with crime in American cities is overreach by the cops.
Well, you know, that's one point. But here, we got an Attorney General named Holder. Attorney General Holder, I call upon you tonight. Now you're the Attorney General. Put it down that you want them returned, all these fugitives. And if the president doesn't believe that our crime in the United States is caused in a minority neighborhood, then he must be smoking the same thing that Big Bird de Blasio's smoking.
All right, on that note, and I think you're right, by the way, Mark Furman, Bo Needle, thanks for joining us. Coming up, it has been a pretty amazing year for President Obama. We don't mean that in a good way. We'll examine his overreaching use of his executive powers right after the break with Frank Luntz, Rich Lowry, Brian Benjamin. Stay with us.